Hello everyone, and welcome to the 4th episode of WONDERTALK, and I'm really glad this is something that can continue, because it's been seriously the highlight of my day, being able to talk and think about Javiik's story with all of you. Very fun, so thanks always for commenting and participating in it. As for Javiik, on our 4th episode of The Wonder of Sator, he got to travel around, and here is his HOLOPAD from that journey. And remember, we decided on last episode that these holopads are more than just for his own personal sake. They are being used by his master in some way or another, studying him. I finally met Lord Zash, and I feel that the additional burdens Harken has chained me with will soon come to an end. On my way to the tomb of Naga Sadow, I was able to recover Dorji's lightsaber. I'll free the Jedi on my return to the Sith Temple. In the tomb, I was able to recover the rods and free the Dashade through a powerful display of the Force. Soon we will break deeper into the temple and recover the map that lies within. On the last episode of WONDERTALK, I asked you guys what my character's former Sith Master might be like. So my cathar was a slave. He got picked up by the Sith. He was doing manual labor, but then he got picked up by a Sith Lord, supposedly to serve in his house as like a noble attendant or a page or like a servant. But maybe that Sith Lord had some other motives, and that Lord's name was Lord SHALIN'S. And what I asked you guys specifically was, what was Lord SHALIN'S area of expertise? We know he was more of a Sith alchemist rather than like a Sith warrior, but there's so many things that Sith Alchemy covered. And you guys had so many fantastic ideas. I want to make like 6 characters, each one just using all these different things. So if you're interested in making a Sith Alchemist character, here are some really great ideas that all of you guys have submitted. This one is from Jenari Asha, and Jen has actually been kicking around posting lots of stories, and Jen's comments really tend towards the more violent side of the Sith. And that's actually really okay. If I was a Jedi and Jen was saying, go kill everyone, go on a murderous rampage, that would be very out of character and a little strange. But the Sith really are based on violence and gaining freedom through violence, gaining power through violence. It's part of their nature because of the warping nature of the dark side of the Force. And so this is what Jen's idea was. The Master sought to use Javiik as a tool to achieve his goals, a blunt instrument that he would able to release his enemies, cause chaos, and take advantage of it. By accidentally losing his lightsaber and awakening all of Javiik's Force powers in but a moment, he hoped the cathar would be overwhelmed and if the pure dark side fury would try to murder everyone and everything around him. Obviously in the story, this is not what happened, because Javiik is neither dead nor in a crazy person house. And in Jen's story, the Master decides to teach him and grow him because Javiik was so strong that he was able to overcome this. And I like the idea of Javiik being a tool to achieve his goals. One way or another, Javiik is more than just someone that Lord SHALIN'S just supports blindly, just out of the love in his heart. He is a tool in the end. And he wants Javiik to succeed, but for his own reasons and goals. This is a fun little idea by Trig PT, and I picked up a headband, a pretty fancy ornate headband earlier in the game, and I was kind of making fun of it, saying it was a little more feminine and fancy, but someone else in the comments said, rock the circlet, so I decided to just keep it and Javiik can enjoy it. And Trig PT said, Lord SHALIN'S Sith Alchemy specialty is artifacts and their creation. The circlet that Javiik wears is actually a creation of SHALIN, allows him to see through the eyes of the wearer and plant thoughts into them. SHALIN'S retirement from the Academy was not entirely voluntary, and he secured a place for Javiik as part of his plan to get revenge. You could tie into the class story by having Lord Zash as the person who forced SHALIN out of the Academy. I'm not going to use the idea of the circlet because I actually just picked that trash up off the ground and I should have decided if it was something special earlier on. And I don't really want Lord SHALIN to be able to see his every move, otherwise he wouldn't really need the holopads as much. But I think it's a very cool idea for Sith Alchemy to focus on the creation of Sith artifacts. And there is a lot of lore attached to all of the idea of Sith artifacts. They're not just kind of a vague concept. There's lots of actual Sith artifacts, named Sith artifacts, that exist in the books, the comics, and the games. I also like the idea of Lord SHALIN being retired, as in a fancy way of maybe causing so much trouble he was kicked out. Maybe experimenting on the students, I don't know. And this is a really cool idea, and it's something I actually forget about a lot. It's not what I'm going to be using, but something I really want to share with you guys. And this is from Thomas Dumere. Maybe you could push the idea that Lord Shalin is some kind of black sheep or grey Jedi, and so he would seek the balance of the Force. Therefore, his alchemy work could be about containing or curing the Rakghoul plague. What's really interesting about Thomas's comment is that the Rakghoul, from what I understand, were not like a scientific plague or just a mutation. The Rakghoul plague was actually very much pushed by Sith Alchemy in the first place. I don't know enough about it, I don't remember enough about it, but in the Knights of the Old Republic games, it really seems to be like a biological problem, and it's trying to be cured by science. But Sith Alchemy is truly something that would be the proper way to cure it, because that's where it originally originated from, and there's all kinds of crazy lore attached to that, like the Dark Staff, which can turn people into mutant Rakghouls and all that, so that'd be a really cool type of character to play. And two different people actually suggested Sith potions, and Chancelchio said maybe his master could specialize in making Sith potions that increase the power of Imperial troops and Sith alike, and some of his best materials come from Quesh. Maybe Javiik could have been very good at identifying the best materials for making Sith potions. Sith poison used for torture and to weaken a Force user's ability to resist the temptations of turning to the dark side of the Force, and Flesh Raider elixir, which, although it's not a product of Sith Alchemy, does have the effect of making the drinker more violent and aggressive. So there are apparently actual Sith potions, like potion master magic, that exist in Sith lore, which is pretty cool. And Death Shadow had the same idea of potions, but took it in an entirely different direction, which really shows how much you can play with one simple idea and make an entirely different background or story out of it. Maybe he sent him to the Academy so that he would get toughened up and develop some sort of Force resistance that he could use to test out some potions and poisons on him, so that he could plan assassination attempts on Sith Lord rivals or potential enemies. Follow up on Drum and Cost with Lord Drow, who can be some colleague to the Master, as he is the one who developed the Queel Venom. And that's such a cool idea. This is not what I would have ever thought of myself, so good job, Death Shadow. And Sith Poison seems like something really interesting, and definitely something a Sith Lord would be interested in. And this is a fun one, and one that I kind of feel would be very likely in my story. And this is from Schmitty423. What if Lord Shalin was studying ways to increase Force users' abilities, and enhance Javiik's with all the artifacts he had him touch? This might also mean that Javiik's natural Force powers would just be average, nothing really to write home about. And I like the idea of Javiik being pretty average as a baseline, and then just all the crazy stuff that happens to him is what actually makes him strong. He was never like, I am the strongest Sith in the world from my very inception. And this is a very cool take on the amplification idea by the Grand Admiral. What I think regarding your master and his interest in both alchemy and Javiik, since alchemy takes interest in not only the way the Force manifests, but specifically manipulating it, I feel like that his prime interest with Javiik. He has maneuvered Javiik into amplifying his Force powers, almost certainly without Javik's knowledge, which is how he has manipulated the Force manifestation in him using the lightsaber of his master. Now, he may be fairly content to wait, at least in part, and see what his experiment produces, but it's possible, and likely, he won't be entirely happy just sitting and looking. Sith are prone to continue working with something, especially at the time of SWTOR before the Rule of Two came about, and far less likely to just sit around while plans laid in place happen over time, so he could be continuing to manipulate his fate for either his goals or just to adjust his experiment. And I think that's a really cool concept, that just because Javik's master isn't there, and just because Javik's master sent him off to Korriban, doesn't mean he's not still subtly influencing things along the way, maybe making sure that his experiment doesn't get killed or get in over his head, or maybe even to push his experiment even further. Maybe he's the one who's been pushing Harken to give me such a hard time all the time, so I really get toughened up and really give me a reason to have some hatred in my life. And this is the comment that I think I'm going to go with. This is from Joseph Henricher, and they said, perhaps his master specialized in creating creatures, inspired by the Tyrantotex of old, and who worked to make creatures similar to the Emperor's monoliths. If you wanted to add more, you could say that the Emperor discovered the research and quietly had the Sith liquidated to take the project for himself. But I know you're trying to avoid being too interconnected with existing characters, so that might not work. But it would be interesting to have the dynamic. And Joseph, I think the idea of making creatures similar to the Terentatex, which are creatures you encounter in Knights of the Old Republic that are actually force resistant, so very strong against Jedi, is a very cool idea. And I was wondering if it would be especially interesting because Javiik is kind of part beast himself. Well, you know, he's a sentient being, he's part cathar. We make lots of jokes about him being a kitty cat, but he does have a lot of strength beyond what humans normally have. So I think it'd be interesting to have his master, I guess, studying that or experimenting that, of really having an alien creature who is also very strong take advantage of the Force. We know there aren't that many aliens, and I don't think there are that many cathar to start with. I haven't seen a single other cathar the entire time I've been in Korriban. Neither, no NPCs, and I don't think I've seen any actual player characters either, so maybe Force using cathar are quite rare to start with, and so maybe it's kind of like we just met a Dashade who has been manipulated by the Force, so maybe he's trying to do the same with cathar and see where he can get if it's a project that no one else has really tried before. Maybe put me through my paces on Korriban and maybe influence my way a little bit, and then do some stronger experiments on me to make me even stronger. We already know he's amplified my Force a little bit, mess with it a bit with that lightsaber. I wonder how far exactly he'll go. And in this Wonder Talk, we're actually going to be skipping the lore for once of Javiik and making a very important decision. And this question is, should I be using the Sith Inquisitor Sorcerer Madness combat proficiency or the Lightning proficiency? And these are the two styles of fighting. If something comes up and I need to switch them, these are the actual ones that I can swap back and forth between, but it is kind of a pain for a free-to-play player, so I'm just gonna pick one and stick with it as long as I can. So the two choices are Madness and Lightning. Madness, delving ever deeper into the dark side of the Force, can lead to madness, but it can also lead to immense power, attacking multiple enemies simultaneously and instilling terror into their hearts, all the while sapping their very essence from afar. The Madness Sorcerer is a dark threat, unlike any other. And Lightning. Lightning is a skill tree of the Sith Inquisitor's Sorcerer Advanced class. The tree focuses on overloading enemies with blasts of lightning from a range. Pretty simple, but very cool. Now, when you're deciding on a combat proficiency, there's a few things you want to consider. As a Sith Inquisitor Sorcerer, I have the choice of 1 healing combat proficiency and 2 damage ones. I decided I want to do damage while I'm leveling and save the healing maybe for endgame. But that still leaves me 2 to choose from, and some classes even have 3. One of the ways you can look them up is by learning from truly veteran players who are very experienced in those classes. And there are guides for max level characters on how to do the most amount of damage either in player versus player combat or in the very difficult group operations in the game. And these players have researched their classes in depth and created guides about how to play them to the best of their abilities and what all their abilities do. So Scion wrote the Lightning Guide on Delphi.net, really awesome fan site, and they said, with 5.0, the most recent update, Lightning has been nerfed pretty hard. We are currently dead last among the DPS specs. We'll still be viable for the mid-tier rating, but as far as the highest tier rating goes, I find it unlikely that we will be able to do the damage unless the rest of the specs are so far above the DPS check that our low damage is still enough. So basically they're saying that the Lightning spec is really, really weak right now compared to the other classes. We're supposedly getting, classes get balanced all the time. The developers try and make them as balanced as possible. They don't want there to be like a flavor of the month. They don't want people picking a class based on whether it's stronger or not, just whether they enjoy the play style or not. But sometimes they guess wrong, and sometimes people find clever ways to use the classes that they didn't anticipate, and they have to go and balance them later on once they have more facts and numbers to work with. And that hasn't come very recently. It's going to be coming down the road. It's on the roadmap, but we'll see till we get there. Lightning is considered very, very weak. And for Madness, the guide by Emery says, Madness is currently the best yet most difficult sorcerer DPS spec in SWTOR. So basically, I have these two choices to choose from. Lightning, which is considered one of the weakest damage making combat proficiencies of the game. But to be fair, I'm probably only going to be doing the story. I don't think I have to worry too much about being the strongest in the game. As long as I'm strong enough to get through my stories and quests, it's not a huge deal. And then we have Madness, which is quite strong and decently balanced as far as I understand, but it's a lot more difficult to learn. That makes a really interesting choice. Easier to learn, but less damage, or harder to learn, but more damage. And here's something that was posted by Dirty Emp a little while ago when I was just making my character, and they wanted to give me some advice about which advanced combat proficiency I should choose. Currently, Madness does more damage than Lightning, but I find Lightning to be more animated and more enjoyable. Personal opinion. I actively run 3 Sorks, 1 Healer, 1 Madness, and 1 Lightning. Madness is more keeping the dots going and is mobile. Lightning is more burst damage, and Spectrite can be really good. Sadly, the class is ranked last in the DPS, but it is the most fun. As a free-to-play, it's a bit more costly to respec, so trying both out might be a bit of a cost issue, but depends more on what you like best. So here's when it comes down to you guys. I'm going to be putting a poll in the YouTube video. I don't exactly know how it works. Hopefully you guys can see it and you can vote for it. And you guys are going to choose which advanced combat proficiency I'm going to use. Lightning or Madness. Whichever one wins on the poll by the next time I play the game will be the one that I choose. And in the comments down below, I'd love for you guys to give your opinion on which class you should play and why. Very fun to read, and even if it's just a silly answer, go for it. Or if it's a lore answer, that would also be cool too. Or which one you think I'll have more fun playing. I'll see you guys on the next episode of Wonder Talk, and I'm looking forward to see what combat proficiency you guys pick. I have absolutely no idea, and I won't find out till the next episode. Bye!